Okay, so I did some work off stream, nothing, nothing so big, just some changes. I have added some fields into the message headers. I've added a field called expires in, and these fields will be used mainly in comments. And these fields can be either null or a duration. And what will happen is that when the entity will receive this message, what will happen is that if that message is processed between, let's say that the message says, okay, I want to add a new document, and that message expires in 20 seconds. If that message didn't get processed between the 20 seconds until he has been received and then processed, that message will be considered as expired and won't be processed anymore. And this is one utility that made me obviously change a little our event journal we built on stream last time, because now I have not just this sequence and event, but now I also have the date of when the message has been persisted. Or maybe it's better to call it, rather than persisted, it's created at. That's better, because the date is actually not the date of the persisting the event, but is created by the event source aggregate. Persisted that, it reads the current time, and then this persisted that we just rename to created at, then becomes this. Perfect. So a very small change, but that also changes now our tests, that now I don't need to pass the sequence into the journal.append method, but instead I pass an entire event journal storage entry, and this event journal storage entry now takes in also the dates it has been created, the sequence, and the event. Okay, so we left last time saying that right now we have tests for an event journal that is in memory. And before starting using that, maybe we want something more persistent. Maybe we want to have something that is persisted, for example, into an SQLite database. And so what I think that we will work on today is using effect SQL in order to persist those messages. So let's start by adding, obviously, the package. Oh, we already have that. Perfect. We need to create a new kind of event journal storage. This one is the one in memory. The one we need to create is instead persisted by SQL. So let's start by saying const SQL persistence, SQLite, maybe. And let's see. We can copy some logic from here, I think, but we'll say affect.gen. First, we need to provide file name, which is string, and this will be the actual database file. And then we can create an effect. Function star. Okay. Okay, so let's have a look altogether at the documentation for Affect SQL. So let's go to the Affect website, docs. As you can see, docs has changed. They are now more usable, in my opinion, faster. So that's better. So let's have a look. Let's see if we have documentation here. Affect SQL. Those are not documentation. Let's go for the API reference. That should be in here on the left, I think. Oh, well, I moved it to the block. Here we should have API reference for. Oh, we don't have one. There's, oh well. Let's go to the GitHub page. Effect. Packages. SQLite. We are running in one, so yeah. Test. We have examples here. Let's have a look at the examples. Okay, we need to equal make client. Here basically creates a file. So we need to definitely add create table test, blah blah blah. Insert into, yeah, okay, so let's try. So first we need to add a package that yield. We need to import the SQL function, which comes from yielding affected SQL. So import everything as SQL from effect SQL find. So ideally, if I do const SQL equals yield star SQL client, this should be an SQLite client. Perfect. And then we can do things like yield star SQL. And here we can do things like create table. And here we can create our tables. Okay, so create table events, event journal, and we'll have as keys aggregate root of type text, aggregate ID of type text, and then we have sequence was int, and then we have entry event payload, maybe text as well, and that's it. That we've created a table. Okay, and then we need to provide the read functions and the append function. So let's start by using append. So const, like we can copy that from here, const append, those are the arguments. Okay, so we have to basically perform here just an SQL here, and this will be insert into event journal. Aggregate root, aggregate ID, sequence, and then event payload. And if I remember correctly, there is a syntax into affect SQL that allows you to do more easily inserts. Oh, well, that's not what I wanted. Affect SQLite button and these. Sorry, SQLite client. Okay, and there should be a thing like reserving 2 rows. Okay, well, that's fine. Let's just do it the old way. So here, values, and here should be able to just remember seeing more example SQLite node maybe. Oh, there they are. Yeah. Here you can see that you can insert value, whatever, insert into. Perfect. With SQL with transaction. Ooh, nice. Okay. Okay, so values, and here we'll have our actual values. And I think that you can use things like SQL, sorry, here SQL dot. There you can see that you have various utility, save, and here I think that with save, you get automatically escape. Okay, so they get automatically escaped, so I don't need to do anything. That's even better. I can just say aggregate root name, aggregate ID, and then we have and journal entry like journal entry dot sequence, and then we have our actual journal entry. But guess what? That won't work because this is an object, but instead we need to persist a string. So let's see. Void SQL. Oh, right. We will eventually get SQL errors while reading or appending. So that's true. So we can change a little our interface. Either we see that the semantic is retry indefinitely until you succeed persisting. And well, that's one choice. Or we create an error specifically for that. So let's start maybe by saying export class event journal append and tree tailed extends data dot tagged error, and the tag is for now this one. Perfect. And then you want the possible fields. I don't want any. Maybe I can just provide the entry itself. Sequence, maybe I want to use number. Okay. So we can say that appending may result into event journal append field for some reason. Bitty, 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 bitty. And so we say pipe second all, and we will squash the SQL error into a new event journal and entry sales sequence journal entry dot sequence. Okay, so now the types are happy for the whole function. And the thing is that here journal entry is not assignable to a string, a number, or whatever. And that is because, as I said before, that is an object. We cannot persist into SQL an object. So that's why we have here schemas argument. And this is a read-only array of the possible schemas for the event we are trying to append. So maybe we should change a little, and instead, maybe the first thing we do is something like schema dot encode. We want to transform our object into something that can be persistent, like a JSON string. And the schema we will use is schema dot parse JSON. A schema dot parse JSON is a combinator that, given a schema, converts a string into a known, so it parses. But I think that there is also JSON. Yeah, parse JSON. But you can also provide, I think, you can also provide a specific structure. And in our case, that's schema.union of schemas. Okay. And this will get us, maybe let me just write it like that so we can see more clearly what is the type. So this is basically an encode function that, given a string, create a parse error and gets unknown. Why we get unknown? Because here I'm passing schemas, which is an array, but instead I'm supposed to spread them. And now you can see that we get the type we expect. So basically we can, given a string, we either fail because there is a malformed error, or we eventually get our, effect parse. Oh, we encode, yeah. So given our object, we get the string, and if there is an error, we parse error, and the context required is the one from our schemas. Right, perfect. So we actually need to provide the value we want to encode, and that's journal entry dot event. I don't care about the other data. And now this is an effect that returns a string. Perfect. And so now we can do the same we did before. So effect.gen maybe, just to keep it more readable. I could have used flatmap as well. So here, and saying that the event payload equals yield, and this is a string hypothetically, a yield star, sorry. That is a string, perfect. And now we need to perform the actual insertion. So we encoded the payload, and then we perform the insert into the database. Here, as you can see, it's screaming at me because this C property sequence is missing in parse error, because this function is expected to return, as we have seen before, an append failed error. So we need to say affect catch all, whatever the error is, we will say new event journal append entry failed, the expected sequence, and then the journal entry dot sequence. Okay. Now, context is not assigned to type never. Oh yeah, and that's because schemas, any no context. So this should not have any context. That's fine. So here, why are you trying to say context the event's number? Well, oh, this is already, yeah. This is kind of, okay, so now we need to say that this doesn't care about that. So let me just clear that up one step at a time. Here we have, why do you say unknown? Oh yeah, this should be spread. It was correct before. Okay, the thing now is that this context is not valid, so I'll just type in for it. So I'll say that this one is an effect. We'll encode here. Maybe we can say something like const. We'll have a function. Maybe const, yeah, same thing. Const make event union schema function that takes in events, extends with the array of schema dot schema and in a context. Okay, and this is the events we can have. And now we need to return a schema, schema dot union of events. And I want to type this such as this is a schema of, and here we have schema, schema dot type of events number. Right? A number with a lowercase maybe. Okay. And then we have schema encoded of schema dot encoded events number, and we don't want any context. Okay. Okay, so let's try to understand why it's complaining. It's saying that context of this is not assignable to type never. So union. I think that when you use union, members, extend ast.members, read only array, not an empty array. Oh yeah. Or maybe, oh, I see. TypeScript. Always fighting towards everyone. Events. Okay. Now this, yeah, this is what I actually want. Yeah. Yeah, in this case, context is not allowed to type any. Yeah. let's try again. If I say the same thing here, oh well, I don't have events here, but yeah. Now I need to say here make event union schema events schemas, sorry, not events, schemas. Okay. Okay. Now you can see that I get the encoded value. Schema dot encoded, parser, and never. Okay. And that's because I forced that in here. But yeah, the thing is that I'm using something wrong. Let's have a look together. Let's see. Here events is schema any no context. So any no context means that those have no context, right? And it's an read-only array, okay? So ideally, if I do type context equals schema dot context of schema dot schema any no context. This should be never by default, right? That is correct. So there is something wrong in my code that makes that unknown, or events number is that. Okay. So let's see. I think that may be caused by the fact that here we have the type number schema.encoded. Oh, I have typed that 2 times. That's one problem. Okay. Yeah, I think that the problem is that by extending a read-only array here, I lose some type inference, but yeah, I can just swish this, and now this should be fine. Yeah, we get the encoded shape, parser, never, perfect. And that we need to say schema dot parse JSON of this, and this should be an effect that string parse error never, perfect. Okay, now we can go back to our effect.gen function start. This is our function, perfect. And then we can say pipe effect.catch all, and whatever will be just a new event journal append failed. Here sequence journal entry dot sequence here, perfect. This is missing. Oh, that is appearance too much. Perfect. Okay, now this is an effect. In order to get the actual value, we need to yield that. And we'll get now the string payload. Perfect. Now we get the string payload. And so instead of appending that, we need to append the event payload. That's perfect. And that will basically be our append function. And we need to return append. And that's it. Okay, so that's the append function. Now that we have the append function, creating the read function should be easier. This is our signature. We can copy from here. We have then read. Okay. And read will be, let's start by saying function. By the way, you're not forced to use effective gen. Okay, so we can say row data equals yield star SQL and select everything from event journal order by sequence ascending and where aggregate root equals aggregate root name and aggregate ID equals aggregate ID. Perfect. And this one returns aggregate ID. Yeah, that's perfect. This returns row data, which is a row array. And so if we say row data, I think that it is also utilities to read as it was a schema baked into that. And at the end, we need to select. And then let me check. Here we have read the message. Here we have the row data. If we go to row data 0 doc, you can see that row data, go to type definition. Row data is a read only, row data. Yeah. You go to time definition, SQL collection, row, which is our basically a column and then a predicate. Yeah, that's fine. So here, for each of those entry we need to decode that because that will be a row having aggregate root, aggregate ID sequence. Oh, we are missing another important value. We recently created that. Yeah, definitely. Okay, sequence, and then maybe. Oh well, we have created that into the payload, so well, doesn't matter. Yeah, so we're saying here, we select the values, and once you have selected the values, what we can do is go and say, or something like stream equals stream from iterable, and we will start from our row data, and then we'll get a stream of rows perfectly. But now that we have our stream of rows, maybe we need to, for each item, transform that in that row item. We need to decode the payload. So we have stream dot map effect row, and we need to do something like schema dot decode, and the schema we want to decode is again schema dot parse JSON make event union schema. We should have here the events schemas. Okay. We need to pass in our value, which is row dot. It was called, I think, event payload. Perfectly. But that, as you can see, is screaming at us because first we need to stream.unwrap because we had an effect returning a stream, but instead we want just a stream, so we need to call unwrap in order to get that. And then it's saying that parse error or SQL error is unassignable to type never. And that's it because we said here in our type definition that reading the journal is an unfailable thing. And I think that I will keep it as it is. So up to now, we say stream or die, and that's fine. Okay, so now we have something that is screaming at us because, yeah, that could be of any type, but we can for now just cast that into a string. Okay. Okay. And now, ideally, yeah, read needs to be used. I think that now, ideally, we should be up and running because now we read from the journal and order by sequence where they aggregating what we want. And then for each of that, we pass the JSON. And if it fails, we die. Yeah, that's really unlookable code, but it should work. So let's see. Let's see if we can make it better. Let's see. I think that there is room for improvements because, for example, we can say things like when we select here, you can say dot row, I think, and yeah, as effect dot effect, and we can type out the fields we have. SQL client, SQL error that comes from affect SQL. So let's type the fields we have in our event journal. Maybe we can say interface event journal SQLite row. And this will be, as we have just said, aggregate root string, aggregate ID of type string. And then we will have sequence, which will be a number, an event payload, which will be string. Okay, so this is basically an interface that represents our row in our database. And now when we do select here, we can now say that here we will get an event journal SQLite row array. So now that cast is not needed anymore, I think. Yeah, because it understands that this is a string because we have casted it when we do the query in the same place. And I think that we should be up and running. We have 3 errors that are the things that export const. Maybe instead of passing in entire file name, we can just don't care about the file name, and the file name will be provided when we create the actual SQLite connection. So this is an effect, but again, we need that as a layer. So pipe layer.effect and event journal storage, I think. Yeah. And now that is happy. Okay. So I'll move something. Maybe I'll keep this type internal, but move it down maybe. This is function. Here, maybe we can move it after the interface. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we can clean that up later, but yeah. Okay, so in here, why are you screaming? Offhand. Oh, yeah. We have said now that the append could fail with an event journal append entry failed. And so we need to say that when we try to append here, we need to propagate the failure. So where do we want to propagate that failure? Let's say that we have a producer that we can have two different kind of ideas. We can either say that this function, this producer, may fail with that. And for now, that's event journal storage, journal pen failed. And for now, that is the easiest thing to do, but during the development of our application, we will see that we can, if everything is done into a transaction, it can say things like, if if the journal appends entry failed for some reason, we can retry that in some cases. We can have, for example, concurrency case. If everything the entity performs is in a transaction, if it tries to append an entity and sees that the sequence is broken because someone else write a new event, we can retry everything, because if we are performing everything in memory, inside the transaction or whatever, we can basically roll back as we never did anything. Okay. So here, right now, why are you screaming at me? Affect monitor storage, internal storage. Is on site to if I've put into the wrong place. Yeah. I failure into the producer. Yeah. It's void, and then that, and that is void, that, and that never. Okay. Perfect. Last error, append. Append, yeah, we need to change the signature of the producer as well. Producer, that is the draft, and the draft append may fail with event journal storage and entry failed. Okay. Now we are perfect. Okay. Let's try maybe do some tests for our code. So first thing I think we need to do is include SQL SQLite node latest. And and I think that now when I will run pnpm installer, it will broke everything. So let's see. Okay, so it's installing better SQLite. Yeah, that is what I was expecting. We are getting an mat error, yeah, because we have older versions, yeah. Yeah, so let's see. Let me bring it up that up a little. Okay. So let's see. Maybe. Do we have a clean task? Let me see. PM clean. Let's see if that cleans up also the null modules. No, it doesn't. Let's remove the log files. And pm install again. Why? Didn't I do that? Oh, it's recreating that from the null modules. Yeah. Let's toss it away as well. Okay. Now, perform a clean install and see. It will take a while. Okay. Okay. Okay, now we should be in a better place. Maybe I need to restart. Oh well. Reload window. Okay. Okay, now we should be able in here to say things like it dot effect creates SQLite events, and the test will be like basically the same one as this, for example. You can use the same test, and that's one of the great things of the dependency section of effect. But instead of providing memory, we will say SQLite. Now it will complain, saying that it needs an SQLite connection, right? SQLite is not assembled to type test services, right? And then we need to actually provide one. So I think that it works the way like import everything as SQLite node, show effect SQLite node, SQLite client. And then you can do things like SQLite node dot make, and this should return an effect. Yeah. An effect that creates the SQLite client. Yeah. Isn't there also a layer? Yeah, layer. That's better. So we can say effect dot provide SQLite client node dot layer, and I think that will require file name test dot db. But seems like that now it's empty. Maybe I deleted accidentally one missing parents. Yeah. Okay. Well, now we should have everything we need to try to run this test, and it passed. I don't know. Well, we have a DB. I think that I had an extension SQL. I think that I had an extension showing SQLite database. Let's see, extension SQLite. Let's see. This one seems nice. Let's use this. Okay, so I think that now we can do things like SQLite, open database, testdb, SQLite Explorer, testdb. We have our table event journal. And have a look at that. We have our sample event. That's perfect. The only thing that I don't like, oh well, the only thing that I expected different is that here we have, oh yeah. That's right, because in our test, I expected here to also have other metadatas, but yeah, in our test, we don't use those metadatas. If I have a look, that's right, sample event just has the tags and that's it. Maybe we can add some complex fields to make this more interesting. But yeah, that seems to work. And if I try to run again that should ideally fail, and I'll show you why. Let me close that. I don't care about why I get a split view. I don't want a split view. Close all. Perfect. And close all. Okay. Let me show you. If I try to run again the test, it will fail. And saying fail to prepare a statement. And that is because we already have the event journal table. And is there a way to run a query? Yeah. Draw table event journal, I think. And I think that if I save, it will run. Let's see. Oh, SQLite. Run query. Okay, it should have run. If I refresh, we don't have the table anymore. But if we run the test again, it runs. Yeah. So I don't know if SQLite, because usually I use Microsoft SQLite and Microsoft SQL instead of SQLite, but we see SQLite, does it support create table if not exists? Create table, creatable if not exists. Yeah. So here it's even smarter than Microsoft SQL, and say that in our journal here we say create table if not exists. Perfect. And save. And now if we run again our tests, I still expect a failure. Guess why? We run the test, expected 2dp equal 1. And that is because if we take a look at our test DB, we don't have any key or whatever. We show table. Yep, that is. Yeah. We don't have any primary key or whatever. And that means that we can append how many times we want the same event. And that's not exactly what I want. So we need to either create a primary key or a unique key that says that the triplet aggregate root, aggregate ID, and sequence is something that should not be violated. So let's again query draw table event journal, and then oops, run query. Now we should have dropped our table. Perfect. Okay, let's see. How can we express a string? Let's see. We can say create table. Where is aggregate storage here? When we create our table, here create table if not exist, and then we start the description of the table with aggregate root, aggregate ID, sequence, and then payload, and then we will say something like primary key, and then aggregate root, aggregate ID, sequence. This is the primary key I expect to have. And if we try to run again our test, it should fail still. But if failed to prepare statement, what did I do wrong? Primary key. Oh, maybe. Yeah. Maybe it's that. Let me see. Where is my database explorer here? Flash. To try to run the query. Syntax error. Oh, did you want that? Sorry. No. Create table if not exists. Blah, 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 blah. I expected that to work that way. Let's see. Oh, it's missing a comma in here, man. Oh man. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Okay, so it's missing a comma here. Yeah, perfect. But now, if we try to run our test, it should run, but the second time it should fail. Yes, perfect. And if I take a look and in the back on our tests here, yeah, errors occurred. Yeah, and the error is that we have broken our primary key. If I try to append with a different sequence, for example, with the sequence 2, and save, and run again, it works, but again, we have 2 events into the table. That's expected. So the thing is that now we need to make so the tests actually recreate the DB every time instead of that. Let's see if we have file name read only pair disable. Well, unfortunately, we don't have method to recreate the database on the file. But yeah, we could say things like const SQL equals yield star SQL client and then we can say yield star. Is there a drop table if it not exist? Let's see. Yeah, we can do things like SQL drop table if exists event journal. Okay, now the dash number has occurred. Why? Let's see. What can be the possible error? Let's run that. Okay, and see here. Let's run the test in debug mode. Here. Oh well. Yeah, to be honest. Oh, now it's passed. Oh, I added the file in usage. Yeah. Makes sense. Okay. No, well, no. It's actually let's see. If I say the thing is that I passed that now the error has occurred. I wish it gave more information than only just an error has occurred. Let's see. expect the append to fail. So if I debug, I expect to come here and then fails. Okay. Okay. Let's see. I expect to also reach that point if it fails. Okay, that's the error. Fail? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's append journal entry failed with the sequence 0. Okay. Okay. So let's maybe put a breakpoint in there and see which is the actual. Okay. Debug. Test again. Here, yeah, we append. Okay, here. It was too late. No. Okay. I don't know why inline failed to prepare a statement. No such table, event journal. Oh, makes sense. I dropped the table, but the table is created when the layer is provided. Yeah. So delete from. Yeah. Silly mistakes and how to make them. Okay. Now it should pass every time. Yeah. Because each time it cleans up the event journal. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. So we can even go more towards some customization. Maybe instead of having a fixed name for the event journal table, we can say something like um, export interface uh, event journal SQLite R make arts, and this could be table event journal table name string, so that way you get to pass in an event journal SQLite make arms. Okay, and here instead of hard coding the name of the table, we can do things like SQL.row row. Unsafe, I think. No, that creates a statement. Um, there was a way to say that I want this exact string. Literal. Yep. Literal args dot journaling. So that creates a table with a dynamic name, and inserting to, we need to use the same thing and select from, same thing. So now in our tests, we can say things like SQLite, journal table name will be events journal, and right now it should behave exactly as before. Perfect. Okay. And I think that with that, I am almost happy with how it works. I think that we can spend some time cleaning up the code because it's quite a mess right now. So let's see. This is our argument. Nothing much more to clean. We get an SQLite client, and then we create the events table if node exists. Okay. And here then we have all of our madness. Yeah, we can do that. Now that we have write the function, we can do that all inside one pipe. Effect.top. And perform the SQL. So we don't use effect.gen. That is event payload. Oh, well, let's go back. What I screwed up. Here. Yeah, okay. Maybe let's keep it like that. That's fine. The only thing that I am not so happy that we need to see is that maybe instead of catching all, we can say dot catch SQL error. So in case of an SQL error, we return in case of that, we return that, or we die. So that way, if we have an SQL error, we fail, and given we just perform an inserting to, that means that either a table doesn't exist or we have broken the primary key, which will be most of the cases. I don't need to return that. So we can clean it up. Okay. And here we can do things like we have our raw data. From our raw data, we create a stream.from irritable. Yeah. I think that this can be expressed in a more clean way than the one we have right now. So let's try to clean up this code. We need to perform the query, and that is the query. So we can maybe we have the query, then from that can do that stream, then we need to map effect. Yeah, given here we have stream, and stream doesn't play really nice with effect.gen, because the thing is that Stream is a multi-shot, meaning that it may trigger multiple times for each value that the stream emits. There is no, again, syntax for stream. So the other approach we can use here is to use a pipe syntax. And so it will be something like performing the query first to get the raw data. So let's just move in here, perform the query, then we'll get the raw data of pipe, and then we say stream from mutable. Oh, well, but that is an effect, yeah. Then from, yeah, we need to, that cannot work. We still need one level of effect, yeah. We still need one level of effect because here we need, in order to get it from iterable, we need to have the actual array, so we need to perform the effect first. So yeah, yeah, we can do things like stream wrap. Yeah, let's keep it like that for now. Yeah, we will find something more intelligent definitely next time, yeah. But yeah, for now, I think that I am happy with what I've done. We also have tests that test our event journal. If we look at the table, we have things, we have records. So that's really nice. Yeah. I think that right now we have built half of the infrastructure we need. And the other part of the infrastructure we need that we will look into next time is definitely creating the actual APIs. So right now we have just an infrastructure, but next time we will use effects in order to create RESTful APIs that consumes our event journal and that eventually append things into the event journal. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's just have a quick final look that every test is up and running. They are perfectly all running. Maybe let's just rename this test. Oh no, create SQLite events. We already have named that. Perfect. Okay, let me just check one last thing. Okay. Here we have built the table. The code is working. I think that right now. Right now that is okay. That is okay. Okay. So right now we perform those insert queries, each one into a different transaction, basically. The thing that we need to change right now, and I would like to have, is something that when we have our, let me go to an actual usage. Maybe we have our scratch pad. Yep, scratch. Right now, each event is appended as a transaction. The reason I built this produce-like API is that I would like to everything that happens inside this function to eventually run into an SQLite transaction. That way, everything that happens here is performed inside the transaction. So either we append all events or either we don't. And The thing is that either we introduce into the interface a concept of a transaction, but I think that given we then want everything inside that to be in the same transaction, maybe we can look up if we do something like SQL with transaction, this runs an entire effect into a transaction. So I think that we don't need any change because we could just wrap our produce with SQL dot with transaction. Yeah. Yep. Oh yeah. Yeah. That means that we can just do things like um, this is our producer, and then do like with transaction, and everything that the storage will do inside that will be run into a transaction. I think it only depends on where my SQL client is resolved, I think. Because here, solved here. So that means that we need to create both the storage alongside the producer. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Every time we handle an event, we create the storage again. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Okay, so I'm running out of time, but yeah, it was a quick stream I wanted to do just to start dealing with Affect SQL, which I didn't use before. I had just toyed with, never used in a real world scenario. And this application will be one that will make heavy use of Affect SQL because all of the persistence will be down there. And I think that with that, I will thank you everyone for listening at this stream and tuning in. And I think that we will see again next time in a week. And next time we will start tackling our actual HTTP APIs that will be used to interact with our data. Now that we have a framework that allows us basically to build entities and define events, and then create the state of the entities based on the state of uh, the event journal. So thank you again very much, and hope to see you everyone else next time. Bye bye.